What happens in the sky affects life down here on Earth. The Celestial Compass shows you how and guides your way with astrology you can use from professional astrologer Kathy Beal. Every episode features her light-hearted, practical forecasts and navigational tips, blended with humor, optimism, and a love of patterns, symbolism, and pop culture references. Kathy translates technicalities into concepts that apply to real life. You'll learn how the current moment ties to where we've been, from the recent past to cycles that last happened years ago, and get a look at where we're heading. And much more, from special topics to special guests. The Celestial Compass, enlightening, entertaining, and empowering. Here's your host, Kathy Beal.
Greetings, Earthlings. This is Kathy Beal of EmpowermentUnlimited.net, welcoming you again to 2023. I'm going to do a brief update of the forecast before we get into the meat of the show. This week, everyone's going to start feeling a lot better for a bunch of reasons, and that is the big one. The seemingly big one is Mercury ends its retrograde on the 18th. It's been retrograde since the end of the year. Mars went direct last week. We will finally feel like, we can move. And the big thing that really happens because of that or after that is the new moon on the 20th, which is going to feel like New Year's has finally arrived, like the waiting pattern has finally broken. And this is a very special new year and new moon, and I hope that you will look at forecasts for it. Mine is already at empowermentunlimited.net. It should be at Omm Times very soon. This new moon opens a doorway onto the way of life that we are going to be experiencing for the next 20 plus years. It's really that big. This is a presager of Pluto moving into Aquarius briefly at the end of March. And this is an incredible week for really paying attention to what you're looking at, where your attention is going, and what kind of future you envision for yourself, for your friend groups, and for your long-term goals, and your community, which is small and big. Other things to watch for this month. Actually, the one other really big thing that you will notice is that on the 25th, the social director will move out of the friend zone of Aquarius. That's Venus, ruler of what we value, how we interact with each other, love, beauty, creativity, money. Venus moves into Pisces on the 25th. She's said to be elevated here. This is Stevie Nicks time. Everybody's going to be honorary mermaids, poets, psychics, mystics. Get out your capes. It'll be absolutely appropriate to be wearing them then. But we're going to look longer term in this show. We're continuing our look at what is coming in 2023. And our guest is Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector. He's an award-winning British-trained, that means he went to the equivalent of Hogwarts, seriously, psychic and spiritual medium, and Best American Psychics 2020 Psychic of the Year. Marc's work as a radio show host, hiking guide, metaphysical teacher, inspirational thought leader, certified healthcare provider, and writer, striving to help, inspire, guide, teach, and transform others in connecting to spirit, self, and this wonderful world around us. Welcome, Marc.
Greetings, Earthlings. I love that opening. I come in peace.
I have used it in every single show. I'm an Aquarian. I get to say that. Thank you for hanging out this hour and kicking around what we see coming in 2023. And I am wondering, do you have a general theme for the year that you're picking up?
I do. And I just first, it's MLK Day. So I just want to start off the show, if we could, with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who said, "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today." And that ties into your astrology for where we're going in the next 20 years, because like I started talking about in 2019, which was your year, the year of Aquarius, get ready for the roaring 20s. And this year specifically is a very powerful year. In 2023, it's also known as the year of the 7. And the number 7, we refer to that as truth, or the contemplative truth seeker. And we also call this the slow turn. So we've been building up the last few years with a lot of divide, dysfunction, uncertainty, unknown. And when the number 7 comes into ruling for this coming year of 2023, and for your listeners, we get to, through numerology, we just add up the year. So 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 3 adds up to 7, which makes it a universal year. But what's also interesting, it's divisible by 7. So 2023 divided by 7 equals 289. And what that means, this only happens every 63 years. The last time that this current event with numerology took place was in 1960. And think about 1960, the quote I just said with Dr. King, and where we're at today in 2023. This won't happen again until 2086. So as a result, the qualities that are inherent in this number will be strongly felt compared to other years, because it's ruled by this universal year. So what is the 7? 7 is amazing because it means many different things to many different people. But one of the quotes that I love, it's the 7 colors of the rainbow. It's 7 chords that make a music. It's 7 days that make a week. It's 7 continents that make a world. And it's 7 beautiful letters that make us friends. And that's what this year is going to be.
That's wow. Okay, well, 7 in the tarot is the card of the Chariot, which is mastering, taking opposites and finding a way to move forward with them both pulling the weight. There's a black and a white sphinx at the front of the Chariot, and it's a highly mystical number. So this makes sense. This makes sense. I have been seeing, the word I've been using, because I'm looking ahead at this Pluto and Aquarius transit that will really lock in at the end of 2024. I've been looking at this as a threshold. Like we're standing at a doorway and not,
Ooh,
like
I love
one toe goes over it, and we look around and then we go, "Oh, I'm going to crawl back inside just a little bit." But we can't go back. It also has the character of one of those parking lots that has the spikes at the gate, and you can't, if you try to go backward over it, it'll blow your tires out.
Right.
Yeah, so I see
That's
that
it.
too.
I love that threshold, because that goes all the way back in history. They talk about when you cross a threshold into somebody's house, or when you cross this Rubicon, or this threshold of consciousness. And a lot of people, our experiences, some call it the awakening process, the benchmark process, the paradigm shift. And this will be the year for that. There's going to be a lot of truths, and we can talk about that throughout the show, some of the truths that I see coming. And I'd say probably the biggest 3, and this will tie right into what you're saying, Kathy, with astrology, is our oceans are going to continue to reveal many truths, because if you think about our oceans, we're 70% water, but yet we've only discovered 5 to 7% of our entire ocean. So think about that percentage of what's not been discovered. And then space, with our main 3 big telescopes out there in space now, the Hubble, the Kepler, and the Webb, is telling us every week something new. And then the last one's going to be Antarctica. That's a continent that has never been really explored. And as the ice melts and as global warming continues to take place, there's going to be a lot of secrets revealed through Antarctica. And we can talk more about that in depth as well.
Interestingly, I've got some of these written down for things I wanted to ask you about. So, big surprise.
There's a psychic.
Yeah, some say I'm psychic too. Before we jump into all that, well, actually, no, I will forget this. I just want to say, I believe today there is an entity in Britain, and I do not know exactly who it was, that has declared that octopuses are sentient, that they're that there was this. I think that's going to change a lot. Unrolling of recognizing the differences, or the consciousness in all animals, which could end up being part of a massive shift in our eating habits. But that's really jumping. Going back to my list and order of things, because I have kind of a sequence here. So for individuals, the general tone of the year for individuals is going to be starting to look at the world in a very different way with the truth. How would you, if you were like looking at, not talking to people about the big stuff going on way outside, which affects us all, but on an inner, on a personal level, how does that translate? The 7.
Yeah. Yeah. Great question. So, it's always based on perspective, whether we see positive or negative traits of the 7 displayed on us or on our willingness to put forth that effort. The 7, if we go back through numerology, got to backtrack here just a second for your listeners. I follow Pythagorean's concept of numerology, which in recorded history, it's about 11,000 years old as far back as I've done my research. Now, there's 4 main types of numerology, but I go with Pythagorean because that's numerology is the cousin to music, and that's where Pythagorean started to see a sequence and a communication of our universe and how the universe connects with us. Now, the 7 itself was thought to be his favorite number. Not only for its qualities, but for its attitude. The 7 walks alone, but it's not lonely. It's open-minded. It doesn't accept everything at face value. It's spiritual, but it's not religious. And what I mean by that for the personal journey, this is a number of wisdom, intelligent. It's a number of logic and learning, and very much spiritual growth. Now, it's depending on the true seeker for your listening audience, and with that in mind. Maybe they don't want to have their world disrupted. Maybe they like the status quo. I'm finding this. You talked about the octopus. I'm a big believer in extra-dimensional beings and ETs and aliens. And when people say, Mark, have you seen an alien? I say, yes, I have. I've seen them several times. And they're like, really? And I'm like, yes, I'm a certified advanced scuba diver, and I've seen octopus all over the world. And octopus is the only species on the planet that has DNA related to another species on the planet. And you're right, with the study in England, they just confirmed that they're sentient beings. Logic, reasoning, emotions, empathy. Watch that new Netflix documentary, My Octopus Teacher. It'll change your way how you see how we interact. But with the 7 energy, if you choose the positive, that's the positive of it. If you see the negative of it, it can also bring about ignorance and unwillingness to accept facts, participate in misinformation or gaslighting or cognitive dissonance, religious fanaticism, and just downright absurdity. So the number depends on the person and the perspective, but I'm going with the positive, and at its best, 7 is a very highly intelligent, romantic truth type of imagination number, and, that's what I'm going to go with for this year.
And doesn't it hold the possibility or the potential of mastery? Doesn't it hold the potential of actually gaining mastery over something and moving your life forward?
Let's tie it into that threshold that you talked about, because Reeve, the last few years have been building up with all these different paradigm shifts and consciousness and social media and the news and the world and the uncertainties. I like that concept that you use about the threshold, because this is the point of our roaring 20s that I've been talking about for the last 3 years now, since 2019. We're stepping into that threshold, and you're right. We're going to dip a toe in and go, I'm interested, but I'm not sure. But once I step across that threshold, you're right. You can't go back, otherwise those spikes are going to deflate your tires. And no one should ever go back. We should always be moving forward. But that will be the spiritual guidance and the spiritual wisdom that I'm talking about. And I always say education leads to knowledge. Knowledge leads us to wisdom. Wisdom hopefully leads us to enlightenment, and that's what this 7 year of 2023 is going to be.
An interesting factor in this that I've been paying attention to with the coming shift of our big relationship to power, which is one way you can look at Pluto, our relationship to power moving into Aquarius, the sign of the collective and very progressive and humanitarian. The last time that happened, was during or saw the French Revolution, which we could talk about for a long time, but also the writing of the U.S. Constitution and many other events. And it carries a power of the individual or the power of the little guy banding together to go against the entrenched way of being, the entrenched power structure. And of course, it can go too far, which is what happened in the French Revolution. It got very violent. I'm not presaging violence here, but there's a shift in power and how you interact with power and what you claim for yourself. And by power, I do not mean slamming your fist on the table and screaming at people, but acting from a position of, what was that word you were using? Truth, your own personal truth about yourself and the world, and just acting in consonance with that. So I see that being really big this year.
Yeah, and again, it's this year of 2023 is what I call the battle, and because it's ruled by truth, the truth seekers, it's going to be an increasingly intense struggle between imagination, between wisdom, between intuition on one side, and on the other, cynicism, narrow-mindedness, impaired judgment, if you will, and we're kind of seeing that within our social makeup. I talked back in 2019 for our Roaring Twenties of culture wars, religious wars, civil wars, and technology wars, resource wars. That's going to continue to take place, and we're going to start to really see that. But on the upside, I see this as a year of intelligence and insight building us towards a promising and peaceful future, just like Dr. King talked about in his I Have a Dream speech. Because the last time we had this year was 1960. And if we understand civil rights movement, guess what? That was 1960, and that was based on civil rights. This year's going to carry a lot of that same, not on civil rights, but just on human rights.
And with that, we're going to take our first break. Stick around, everyone. It's only going to get more interesting. Welcome back to Celestial Compass. I'm talking today with Marc Lainhart, fellow member of Best American Psychics and fellow Ommie Awards winner. I want to shout that out to both of us. Well, let's see. There's so many ways we could go. Why don't we get the collective and political portion of this out of the way?
Oh, boy. Okay, let's do a little prospecting. And congratulations to you, my fellow Ommie Award winner as well.
Yay. Yes, we are a mutual admiration society here. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So, in terms of 2023, what I'll just tee up astrologically. The way the year is starting out is not the way things are going to really go. There are a bunch of monkey wrenches and plot twists and switcheroos in April and May, a lot of which are directly related to the lunar eclipse that took place on Election Day in November. So I'm not getting overly worked up by anything I see going on this month in political news, because I think a lot of things are going to change, and not necessarily in the way I personally think they will. It's just going to be whatever it is isn't where it's going. Do you have any take on what's going on this year?
Yeah, so let's come back to truth, because the number 7 is, presenting itself. And I always like to remind people that, yearly cycles don't, measure that based on the calendar starting January 1st and ending in December 31st. But rather I've found this to be true, that there's a gradual overlap. So a lot of the events that were taking place in 2022, the end of 22, are overlapping and crossing this threshold of truth into 2023, including the political divide, unfortunately, is only going to increase. And the political parties that run our country are going to continue to zero-sum game energy, if you will. They're rooting down in what they see as their truth. And it's very unfortunate for many of us, but that is what we have to go through in order to have transformation and growth. And I don't see the political environment anytime getting to a kumbaya moment. And that includes our national debt. That includes national security. That includes committees of oversight. And there's going to be a lot of truths that come out depending on what side of the spectrum you're looking at. But we come back to that truth and entering this threshold of transformation.
And I think that's all we need to say about this. Mm-hmm. You have other topics that you were looking at. But let's knock one more off before we get to the three big ones you have. And that is, do you have any sense of things in terms of the economy?
I do. And, the two topics, politics and money, they're always hard to talk about because I want to try to keep a positive outlook. But the reality of what I'm seeing based through the numbers, based through the psychic, based through the meditations, through dreams, through intuition, is our global economy is going to start changing as well. And the reason I say that is because you have another part of the world that is starting to have an economy based on their own, backed by gold. The United States isn't backed by gold anymore. It's based pretty much by debt and nothing. And you've got countries like China and Russia and India that are pulling together, Saudi Arabia, North Korea, they're all pulling together to create their own currency. And when you look at that currency is going to start to rival the dollar, the greenback, the pound, and there's going to be some struggles that's going to lead to further transformations and further conflict, unfortunately. But I don't see a great recession. I do see, with this inflation that we have going on based on the numbers, but by May and June of this year, you'll start to see that change and the inflation really start to come down. But with that, we're going to see recession, a slight recession, and we're going to see some differences in the economies based on the U.S. dollar because there's a rival currency that's starting to take effect that people aren't really paying attention to.
That makes sense. Okay, so you have your list of three. Which one do you want to talk about first?
Well, I want to add one more to the list because we're not really talking about the how can I put this in prospecting terms? The mother lode, the holy grail of science. Now, I've talked about the last few years how technology and science and space exploration is really going to change our consciousness and how we see our world. And a good example of this was just a few weeks ago. Scientists achieved nuclear fusion. Now, for your listening audience, they're saying, oh, big deal. But this scientific breakthrough that was announced by the U.S. Energy Department, it can't be overvalued because what this is going to do is for the first time in our history, fusion has been achieved. Now, if you're a geek like myself or a nerd like myself with Star Wars and Star Trek, they talked all the time that fusion was the catalyst that changed the course of human history. Just like, think about electricity. If we go back to the World Fair in Chicago, early 1900s, and they went from moving to fuel to electricity, we can now see our planet from space. Our planet is lit up. So think about how electricity transformed our planet. Fusion, which it's the first time that more energy was released than what was needed to make it happen. So it's like the energy of the sun without using the energy of the sun. And in science, we call that the Holy Grail. And when you find an abundant source of energy, like seawater, which is clean and sustainable, you're going to see new technologies, you're going to see new currencies, new environments, new corporations that are going to all start during our roaring 20s based on this Holy Grail of fusion. And I'm not understanding why we're not talking about it more because it is a huge breakthrough.
You're absolutely right. And it's just fascinating. I'll just throw in here, Star Trek presaged so much of what has developed, the way the world has gone, so many ways. So it makes complete sense that this is part of it.
Science fiction becomes science fact. And if, for your listeners out there, Gene Roddenberry, I was just talking about this on my show earlier this morning. Gene Roddenberry is known as a seer. His wife confirmed that he had the ability to see, just like who's our sleep prophet that would go into dreams and see the future, Edgar Cayce. Gene Roddenberry, with all of the books that he saw a lot of what's unfolded today as a futurist, as a seer, and fusion was a big part of this. If you follow Star Trek, the Starship Enterprise to achieve fusion, which achieved warp drive, which then allowed, Earthlings to be contacted by the Vulcans when we reached warp drive based on fusion. So yes, it's going to be very transformative for the next few years of our Roaring 20s.
Let's look some at the actual planet. You've mentioned a few things about that. Secrets coming out of the ocean, for example. You started with, or truths coming out of the ocean. We really haven't explored. I mean, we haven't been able to get down anywhere near the depths of what is there. Do you have any sense of how oceanic our relationship with those waters could change this year?
Yes, in a couple different ways. The ocean, as a certified diver, and I've dove all over the world, when I drop down, it's literally like dropping into a terrestrial, you're on Pandora. I'm in my avatar, if you will, and I've dropped down, and you see this whole world just full of life and full of color and what we don't understand about it. And I really think in the years ahead that our oceans, I grew up with Jacques Cousteau in his explorations, and it's going to start to teach us that there is a lot of intelligence in our ocean. You talked about earlier in the show about octopus, and we could talk about whales. We could talk about dolphins. Hearing them communicate and how intelligent they are, but they live in unity and community. And I personally believe as we explore with our technology, allowing us to go deeper, Mariana Trench is 3 miles down, for example, we're going to start to see some things that we're like, well, how is that even possible? Because we know more about our moon out in outer space than we do on our own ocean. And that's also going to be tied into Antarctica. It's going to be tied into new species being found. And when I say species, we're going to tie this into not just UFOs, but USOs, underwater submerged objects, because a lot of the ufology, especially the ufology I've been associated with, happened out on the ocean off of Puerto Rico, the tip of the Bermuda Triangle. So there's a lot of things that are willing and waiting to be discovered by us. The question that I really keep struggling with, are we ready to receive it? Is society ready to receive knowledge and information that we're not alone, whether it's here in our oceans or if it's little green men from outer space? How do we know that the intelligence that's taken place of UFOs hasn't been with us this entire time? It's just been hiding in our oceans, and technology that camouflages them from being discovered. And when I say that, that's not just my opinion. NASA just hired 24 theologians for a conference to discuss what does the world do, how does the world react if we realize that we're no longer alone, whether it's in the universe or whether it's here on this planet, that there's another species that's more intelligent than us that's living in our oceans.
I actually have written on my sheet of our discussion, we are not alone. So,
Never have been.
Now you've been really primed, or you've talked a lot about the concept of first contact.
I have.
So who knows whether that's this year or not? If there is a force out there that is, or if we have those among us who are actually wiser than we are, I could see them not revealing themselves just yet, given how fractious everything is. But what's your take?
Yeah, so I call this the drip, drip, drip moment. And the reason I call it the drip, drip, because this is the longest conspiracy theory run in history. This goes all the way back, because some people would argue right now, well, it's our military. And I would agree with that. I definitely agree that there's technology that we're working with, but you can't go back to the 1100s, the 1200s, the 1300s, where there were stories, paintings, storytelling passed down, writings, even in Scripture, the Book of Enoch. There's references to something bigger than ourselves. Take the pyramids that are 12,000 years, estimated to be at least 12,000 years old, and we can still touch them today, right? And a lot of people believe that the pyramids, based on where they lie, the latitude and longitude, correspond with the belt of Orion, But Kathy, here's the interesting thing. The coordinates of where they lie is the mathematical numerology makeup of the speed of light. That can't be coincidental. That's got to be dimensional, Stargate, whatever you want to call it. That's always been interesting to me. And I don't think we're going to have, I don't feel like there'll be an actual first contact moment in 2023, but I do feel in our Roaring 20s in this decade, that drip, drip, drip format that I'm talking about will continue to get steadier and steadier. An example that's just happened within the last 2 weeks, and the major news corporations are reporting on this, which is fascinating to me, especially if 60 Minutes is covering it. But do you remember that flight that was going in from Phoenix to Honolulu and it hit a huge patch of turbulence?
No,
and it caused like 20. There was 25 people on its way to Hawaii, hit some turbulence, and there was about 25 people that were injured. Well, they're now disclosing that the pilot actually saw a cloud go up in front of the plane. It was smooth sailing all the way through. The pilots reported seeing this cloud lift up in front of them at a very fast velocity, and within a matter of 40 seconds, the plane hit this turbulence and dropped. So it's almost like almost an impact or a near miss collision of something that was going way faster than our current technology. And that just is being reported within the last 2 days, which is interesting. But don't take my word for it. I watch C-SPAN. I do Freedom of Information Act. Our intelligence committee has now been quoted as saying the Pentagon classifies UFOs, UAPs as a national security concern, national security threat, and these objects, quote unquote, are of non-man-made origin. So you got to take Russia out, you got to take China out, you got to take technology. It's not of the human, and if it's not of human, and if it's not of this world or of man-made technology, that leaves what else is it? And I think they're going to reveal themselves slowly because, again, are we ready to receive that information? It's going to disrupt a lot of people's status quo, religion. Think how just the religious aspect. Some people don't want to know this. Some people are saying, put on your tinfoil hat, Mark and Kathy, because you guys are crazy. This isn't going to happen. But the signs are there. And I always say, wait, watch, witness.
Here's something that's kind of like the flip of this. The James Webb Telescope recently discovered its first new Earth-sized planet, exactly as Mars was stationing direct. Do you have any sense about this year and what we learn about outer space?
Yeah, we don't really know much. We think we know much, but there's just so much. We're just literally scratching the surface. Like I said, it's like our oceans. 70% of the ocean is covering this planet, and we only know about 7%. Space is no different. We're just having the technology, just like if we go back to the microscope. People for hundreds of years debated on, if you didn't see it with the human eye, it didn't exist. Microscope comes into creation. We know that not to be true. There's a whole world not seen with our eye. Telescope, same thing. You start looking up, and these telescopes, the Hubble, the Kepler, especially the Webb telescope, which just announced our first exoplanet in the Goldilocks zone, which means it can sustain life. Mm-hmm. Yes, I think there's going to be a lot that's going to be revealed this year. And NASA's already said as such. They've already warned us and got us ready that the James Webb will be able to detect either technology or bio or atmospheric that shows that there's a species. We won't be able to get there based on our current technology, and that's not empirical proof because we can't touch it like the pyramids, but it will give us some insight and a view that there is life all out in the universe.
This is a good place for us to take our second break. So hang in, everybody. Who knows where this is going to go in the final segment. Welcome back to Celestial Compass. I'm talking with Marc Lainhart today, kind of spitballing what we see coming in 2023. And you had some other items on your list of big three.
We did. I got sidetracked by the fusions because I forgot how big of a transformational process. But I firmly believe, and I'm going to throw a little bit of, as the intuitive prospector, I've always been fascinated by the wonders and the mysteries of our world, right? Because it has so much to offer. And I believe that Antarctica, which, has been explored since the 1800s. But what we're discovering from the Great White Continent is when people think of Antarctica, they think of a continent covered in ice. And there's so much more to be revealed. For example, there's more lakes. There's, let's see here. I'm trying to remember. There's about 400 lakes sitting under the 3 kilometers of ice in the regions that we have explored so far. And what that means is that scientists, believe that these lakes were formed after the separation of Antarctica from what was known then as, I think it was Gondwana land, I think is how you pronounce it. It's the ancient supercontinent when the continents were at one time all connected and then they separated, right? And the lakes don't freeze because they're under the pressure of the ice sheet. And we know in the 1990s when Russia was down there, the Russian scientists actually discovered a subglacial lake in Antarctica. And by terms today, it's the 3rd largest lake by volume in the world. So some of the biggest lakes in the world are in Antarctica. And when they drill down, they can, this ice has been covered for, 20 million years or so. But what they've since then have learned since 2014, there's an actual diverse, active ecosystem of microorganisms in the lake. And if there's microorganisms, we know from our own ocean that there's a food chain. So the question then becomes, what is the food chain and who's at the top of the food chain? You've got the microorganisms in the bottom of the food chain, but what's at the top of the food chain? And, it's been fascinating with, the stories, the research, the exploration of Antarctica going, you hear about, Hitler, just fascination with during World War II, sending, ships down there. And for this year, the truth is I always say follow the money, whether, if it's conspiracy theory or not, or just an opinion, but follow the money. And what I mean by that is the United States is putting forth billions of dollars to create a new ice-breaking fleet. Now, I'm here in Seattle, Washington, and the reason I know that we only have 2 icebreakers that can go international is because I was in the Coast Guard, and those 2 Coast Guard icebreakers are here in Seattle. But our government is now developing a fleet to start exploring the resources of Antarctica because China and Russia has already done it and they're already way ahead of us. So you don't throw a lot of money at building ships just to go down and explore a sheet of ice. There's so much more that's going to be revealed. And I would say probably some of the top things that would be revealed, let's see here. Underground lakes, fungi, Antarctic fungi, that's, been interesting. It's fungi is a whole nother, we could do a whole nother episode on fungi, but even just the show that dropped last night, The Last of Us, is based on fungi. So it's interesting. But just a lot of ancient things that we don't know. Pyramids, including pyramids. Wouldn't that be something if there was pyramids, which there are, just like in Egypt, there's pyramids on Antarctica. That changes the whole narrative, right? But until we actually are disclosed that publicly, I always have to come back to wait, watch, witness, but start to follow the money. If you're curious about this stuff, follow to where we're putting the money, whether it's in an ice-breaking fleet to go to Antarctica for resources and new discoveries, or if it's in our Space Force, or whether it's in SpaceX. All of this is going to start to give us truths, and that's going to be great for people like you and I, but that's also going to be very disruptive for people that don't like a change in the status quo.
And speaking of change in the status quo, let's talk about the actual surface of the Earth. Climate, extreme weather, and really intense things happening all over the globe. Do you sense that's going to be going on? I mean, that's not going away this year, right?
No, that's going to continue to ramp up, and we're going to continue to see, big tornadoes. There's these storms that are happening, 1 minute it could be 30 below. I'm thinking the Dakotas here where it got close to 30 below. And then 2 weeks later, it's 50 degrees. So the fluctuations, if you just watch the data based on weather patterns and what's going on, it's very clear to see that our globe is changing and becoming more intense. I would even say in the next decade, we'll start to see Category 6 hurricanes. Now, we didn't always see Category 5 hurricanes. We only at one point went up to Category 3. I truly believe that as the global warming intensifies, so will our system of how we measure that. Hurricane 6, Tornado 6, Classified 6, based on wind velocity, based on wind, wave data. Those will actually expand the category of these storms that we're witnessing. I mean, look at Buffalo. I mean, look at how much snow they received. They literally had to dig out, 6 feet of snow within a matter of hours. We've never seen stuff like that in modern history, recorded history. So yes, the year of truth will also be truthful about, okay, what are we going to do as humans that are also contributing to this global warming? What are we going to do with our intelligence to try to make a change? And we're making slow changes, whether it's electricity cars or, like I said, the fusion. But what are we going to do to make a change so our future generations, our grandchildren, our children, our grandchildren will be able to live in a world that is not so intense based off global warming?
It's easy to get overwhelmed and feel like everything is futile, but a ray of hope that I stumbled on, I can't give a source for this, but I read recently that the hole in the ozone layer has essentially been repaired. And there was a time when the hole in the ozone layer was the big thing that was the scare everyone was running around. And we've actually turned some things around so that that can be rectified. It may not be out of our grasp to, I mean, it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen this year, but we may be able to turn around whatever we're doing that's contributing to the weather being so insane. Do you see living? I'm sorry. Go on.
I wish they would talk more about that. I wish they would talk more about the progress, because that, the repair of the ozone layer was a big thing, and that's where we started getting into change of how we live our lives down here. And I just wish they would talk about it more, because it's not that positive aspect is not promoted as much as all the negative fear-based stuff in our media today, unfortunately.
Do you see in this year actual relocation in response to weather starting to become more prevalent? I know a lot of people are projecting that long term, but I don't know if it's going to be anything particularly noticeable coming up in the immediate future.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think that type of aggressive paradigm shift is going to be as much in 2023. I would have spread it out over our roaring 20s this next decade. And again, as we start to explore Antarctica, think of it, right now we have an agreement that the nations of the world will not claim property in Antarctica, right? And we have a no-fly zone over Antarctica. But as global change takes place and the ice continues to melt, I guarantee you there's a whole continent that's being waiting to be explored, but also be staked, be claimed based off the ocean floors to the lakes, to the mountains. And there's going to be some very interesting things in the years ahead of how Antarctica starts to become the new continent where people will start going down to. But not only the continent, but space itself. As we start to move into outer space, we're going to see more exploration, because that's us by nature. We're explorers. And we're going to go down south, and we're going to go up into space.
It's probably not an option at this point in life, but, well, maybe. If you were offered the opportunity to go up, would you? Just out of curiosity.
Yes. Yes. And the reason I'm saying yes, because I go back to William Shatner, who had the ability, and we're talking Captain Kirk here, right? Captain Kirk literally went to outer space. And he said it was so profound of how he saw, just to have that emotion of how quiet and beautiful our world truly is. I would love to have that opportunity to go in that capsule and go up, even if it was for 3 minutes. I would love that experience, because it would shift my perspective.
Clearly.
What about you?
I have this real issue with heights. I'm not sure. I would probably enjoy it by the time we came down, but I don't know. I might have to be hypnotized incredibly to be able to pull it off.
Wake you up when we get up there, right?
Like, oh, now look, no, I don't think so. And I lived in Houston for a long time, so there's a lot of like NASA-related stuff that's tied in with it to me. Anything else on your big three list that we haven't addressed?
No, I think for truth, there is one more. I think another truth that we're going to start to see is our social media and how we interact, because our species is evolving with everything that we're doing. And what are we doing? We're doing everything through social media, whether that's Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or TikTok. I see some truths coming out about social media, about how it's going to start getting cleaned up. And the reason I say that is I go back to the Fairness Doctrine Act of 1949 that was enacted when televisions started to come into the homes of the country. Almost everybody has social media now in their house, on their phone, and I do believe that there's going to be some truths about cleaning up legislative-wise of the stuff that's being put out there. Misinformation, disinformation, cognitive dissonance, gaslighting, stuff that really drives people based on what they're opening on their social media, because it is causing a lot of problems. It can be used for good, but I think one of the big truths that you're going to start to see revealed is how it's legislated, and it's not censorship, but the Fairness Doctrine Act made sure that television stations had to put out factual journalistic, professional journalistic standards. It's truth. And then in the 80s, they got rid of it. That's where cable news came in, and that's why we have cable news today that doesn't have to correspond to any kind of FCC regulations. I think you're going to see some changes with social media because it became very clear through the pandemic how much misinformation and disinformation was presented, and it created battle lines, unfortunately, both in politics, both in families and friends. And you know, my prediction also talks about the great coming together. But if I could just go back to a
Please.
quote that David Attenborough, who was a senior manager in the BBC. So he was in the world of television for a long time. But he said, quote, "It's clear that we'll have to change the way that we live and use our resources. We're at a crossroads where we can choose to cooperate or carry on regardless. Can our intelligence save us? I hope so." End quote. And that's where I'm at. I'm hoping that our intelligence and our great coming together, and words like self-mastery, sustainability, homeostasis, which means balance between fight or flight, that we start to work together and use the social media platforms. And that's what I do today, is I use the platforms for positivity, that we start uniting people, not dividing people, and that we get to this, you know, this vision that Martin Luther King Jr. talked about in his dream speech, that we can start to explore not only our world, but our oceans and space.
And one other thing about social media, during the pandemic, I saw the positive end of it, the positive end of being online, blossom with artistic communities banding together to keep each other sane. For example, I'm in a group of actors who've been performing Shakespeare on a weekly basis for almost 3 years now. And all over the world, people stay up late to do it. And it's been a way that old friends have stayed together. So that can transfer, that can progress more with this, because we've got a big element at the beginning of the year of being very, very aware, conscious of who you're traveling with and what the values are, and parting paths with people who I don't mean don't look at the world the same way you do, but don't have a common concept of humanity. I didn't say that quite well, but the people that do align, I think, are going to forge even deeper bonds, and social media may be part of that. And that's one thing I see going on in this year. And also, when there's divisiveness, sometimes it takes a problem becoming somebody's truth, and then suddenly they change their position completely. And that could be going on this year.
Yeah, and I go to the 70-30 format. I know we're getting close to the end here, but the 70-30, if you go out through history, history teaches us so we don't repeat our patterns of the past. And there's always been 70% that will want to move forward, but there'll always be that 30% that doesn't see the world the same way and will always rebel or always, disagree, which is fine because that is, the world is filled with opinions. But as, Herbert Hildenbrandt talked about, in a world filled with propaganda, the truth is always the conspiracy. So for this year, I want you to remember we're in a world filled with propaganda, and misinformation, and disinformation. And when you start to speak the truth, it's going to disrupt people's way of seeing the world and that status quo. But it's the right, and in the end, it's 70% of the population that does choose to move forward. But it'll always be that 30% that wants to lag behind. And you could apply that to science, to politics, to social interactions with family and friends and colleagues. But that's, I think, why we do what we do, Kathy, and that's why I feel we recognize as Ommie Award winners is just we're setting a tone and a vibration for positivity and to change the world one podcast at a time.
And thank you so much for joining us, everybody. MarcLainhart.com, Mark with a C, LAINHART.com. Please check out his site. He's all over Facebook. He has his own show. Thank you so much for being with us, Mark.
Thank you, my friend. I love this stuff. Thank you for the conversation and the perspective.
Yeah, great. Everybody, my forecasts are at Omm Times and at empowermentunlimited.net. And hang in. It is going to be one extremely interesting year, unlike anything we have experienced.